Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez and today's video is an editing video on this image on the screen right here of Betsy that I took a long time ago in 2018. When I first uploaded that photo on Instagram, I did ask you guys if you wanted an editing video on it and you guys answered yes, and I never got around to making that video, so I'm doing that now, and I guess better late than never. I will leave the raw file in the description area below in case you guys want to edit with me. Before I start editing, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Adorama. Adorama is an industry leading retailer that has been serving photography, videography, and audio customers for almost 50 years now. Their motto is everyone is a creator, and they do their best to unleash that creator within us all by providing us with the tools and expertise necessary to get the job done. I personally shop at Adorama for both the great deals and products I use and recommend, but also the great customer service on those products as well. If you find yourself interested in any product that I talk about in today's video, check the links that will be in the description area below and be sure to use those links if you decide to order. And without further ado, let's start editing. This image on the screen right here is Betsy, of course. I do feel like I want to reduce the color temperature to like 50-50, and that looks better to me. Actually, when I first originally edited this photo, I think I was going for cool tones, so I'm gonna do 56-50, and I feel like that's a little too cold, so I'll just leave it at, leave it at 57-50. Actually, I'm gonna increase all the saturation of this image from the calibration section in the develop module of Lightroom, which is what I'm working in right now. So I like to increase the colors with this blue primary saturation slider, so I'm gonna do that. All the colors are very vibrant now, but the blues and the oranges usually get too far, so I will add a little sharpening first, and then I will go to the saturation section of this HSL section, lower the oranges, actually this is the yellows, lower the oranges. I just had the yellows selected for a second, and I just lowered the oranges to -15. Now I will go to the hues and see how the blues look like, and the aquas and the blues, just in case I want to change these two colors. And this is changing her little shirt thing to a different color that I actually do like, so I'll leave it at +40. And then the blues should be, her shorts. And I like it at -5, but I will also reduce the saturation of the blues to maybe -25, maybe -30. -30, so let me just do that by typing it. And I feel like that looks good in terms of the oranges and the blues. And now, if anything, I'll change the hue. I'm gonna just play with the slider on the oranges, having it at -4 or 6. I think -6 was good. With the yellow slider, I'm just gonna play around with that. And I feel like it's warmer when you go to negatives, so I'll go to like -12. When it comes to all these different adjustments here, I usually try to avoid doing any of the adjustments. I usually like to be very selective and use the adjustment brush to change the exposure and different things, but I will raise the shadows to maybe 20. I feel like +20 it did a good job. Usually if I go too far in the shadows, it looks too flat. When you raise the shadows and lower the highlights, that's just a horrible combo. So I'll actually show you guys right now. So I'm gonna lower the highlights and then raise the shadows, and the image looks too flat to me. So you guys might like this effect, and if you do, that's exactly what you do for that effect. Lower the highlights, raise the shadows, but I feel like it's too flat, so it doesn't look good to me. So I'm gonna just go back to +20 shadows. And now what I feel with this image now is I feel like this lower section is a little too dark, so I will get an adjustment brush, and that's gonna be K on the keyboard. And now I have the brush, and I will paint this lower section here and then raise the exposure. I did paint this kind of midsection and then the legs, and I was able to do it very gradually with the low flow. It's not too low of a flow at 60, but it was kind of gradual, and I like to be very gradual with the edit. So I did raise it to 70. You know what, I'll just show you guys the before and after of that. So this is the before, and then this is the after. Once I got to the after point, I feel like it's a good exposure throughout her top part of the body, to the middle, to the legs. And now I feel like it's a good exposure, but I do want to also increase the exposure of the eye sockets because it just looks too dark there. I always have my brush right here, the adjustment brush. I have the feather to 100. That's why you're seeing two different circles with this brush. And for this specific eye, I am gonna just paint a little bit like directly over the eye, and then I'm gonna increase the brush by using the scroll on my mouse to go a little bit bigger, and then just a little bit bigger, and then do the same thing to this eye over here. And then now I'll zoom out, and then now I will raise the exposure. But I feel like 0.5 is gonna be a nice kind of general area around the eye, but I feel like I didn't do enough on the eyes, so I will get a separate brush. That's gonna be another plus over here. Go to brush, and then I will be very selective with just getting that eye. And if I hover over that brush, you can see that I did paint a little bit past the eye, but I'm gonna leave it alone like that for now, just to see if you don't really see it. then I don't really need to fix that. Now I'll raise the exposure, and I think at 0.4 it looks good. I'll do one more round of the brush, and that's going to be just in the colored section. I think it's the iris where that color is. So I am gonna paint over that and then use my dark eyes preset, which will just raise the visibility of those eyes, the iris. And again, I am going to hover over that so you can see that it's just the iris part, a little bit of the pupil too. And over here where it says preset, that's where I'm going to go to my dark eyes. And that is way too bright. So I think if I go to like 0.65, maybe 0.6, that looks good to me. So I can show you guys the before and after. So I'll delete that and then bring it back. And then that's the before and after. And I feel it's a tiny bit bright on this left eye. So I think I might fix that in Photoshop, but let me just zoom out for now. If anything, I might lower the blacks to -5. And I think after that, I'll export the image now and then continue with Photoshop. And actually, before I continue with Photoshop, I do want to show you guys the behind the scenes real quickly, which is completely unedited. And I did use my Sony 85 1.4 at 1/4000th of a second, ISO 100 with the Explore 600, the TTL version, but I was shooting manually at 1/16 plus 2/3, so that's 0.7. And this is the Westcott Rapid Box XXL. Now that we're here in Photoshop, I will take a quick scan of the image and see what I want to fix first, because that's usually the tough decision for me. Do I want to change the colors? Do I want to do dodge and burn, or do I want to do frequency separation? And for me, what I'm really seeing in this image here is how the skin tone looks like, the yellowish tones in the skin and the face right here. The arms, chest area, and in her face are very different in terms of color to the lower section over here with the arm and the legs. And I want to fix that. So I am going to get a selective color. Where is it? Oh, right down the bottom. Selective color, adjustment layer, and then I will invert the mask and then zoom into the legs and the arm and then just paint over just those legs and the arm. I have the flow at 9, but I'm going to change it to like 83 and make sure that the hardness is a little bit up there, like 44, and just make sure that I paint only on the leg and that arm so that I can change the color of just those two things. Whenever I want to paint a certain section of the skin and kind of keep it visible to where I'm actually painting, because I could have just hit the, I think it's a backslash, and that kind of shows you where you painted, but the red starts to mess with my eyes. So one thing I usually do is I just paint with a weird kind of color. And in this case, I did use -63 on the red's cyan and the red's magenta, -75. And that kind of just made the skin very yellow so I can see exactly where I painted over. And now that I know exactly what's painted and it's just the arm and the legs where I wanted it to be, now then I'm gonna just reset the cyans and the magenta, and now I'm gonna just zoom out and then I'm gonna adjust the sliders to see if I can match it to be better with the rest of the skin tone, like on her face and her arm. And now I do feel like I have it at a good level, so I'll show you guys. This is the before and this is the after. I just feel like it's a little too yellow, so I might reduce the opacity to 80. And in case you guys are wondering what I did to the reds, this is what I did. And then the yellows, this is what I did. It's kind of borderline too yellow, but it's just, I'm gonna try to ignore it because it is more in sync with the rest of the skin tones on the upper part of her body. For now, I will get another selective color adjustment layer, and that's where I'm gonna just adjust everything to the entire image, all the colors throughout the entire image. And I think I've said this before in other editing videos, I don't have a really set plan on what to do. I just play with the sliders until I like what I'm seeing. So I'm gonna do that and then show you guys the results in a second. And now I just finished, so this is what I did to the blacks. This is what I did to the whites, very, very little. This is what I did to the blues. This is what I did to the cyans. This is what I did to the yellows. This is what I did to the greens. I just skipped over that on accident. And then this is what I did to the reds. So here is the before, and then here is the after. And I think with the before, there was more of that prominent yellowish kind of tone throughout the skin. And I think what I just did with the reds and the yellows did kind of fix that. For now, I think I will do a little bit of dodge and burn. And then I don't think I'll do frequency separation to the entire image, but just her legs, because I feel like there's an effect called modeling that happens when it's cold out and you start to see different patterns on the legs. And I think that's what's going on in this image. So I do want to kind of fix that. But for now, the dodge and burn is going to be the curves adjustment layer. I'm gonna raise that up. I'm gonna invert the mask of this layer and then call it dodge, and then do the exact same thing but the opposite direction in terms of the exposure. I'm gonna get another curves adjustment layer, and then I'm gonna lower it down a bit and then invert the mask and then call this one burn. And I think I will just fast forward through the dodge and burn, but usually I will raise the exposure on the face more than anything because I want the face to be more prominent in terms of the pop effect. I want the exposure to basically be the brightest on the face. When it comes to the limbs, I usually brighten the center of the limb and then darken the sides of the limbs, and then that gives me a good pop throughout this entire image. You do want to make sure that you are painting white and you do have the flow very low, and then the hardness is going to be at 0%. And you do want to make sure that you right click over the image to see the different settings of the brush, not over here, because that's just going to change the color of the background. I did add quite a bit of brightness with this dodge layer, but I did reduce the opacity. So I am actually going to just duplicate this layer by hitting Control or Command J and then hit Control Delete. Yeah, or Command Delete maybe. And that just made the entire image black again so that it's kind of like a brand new dodge layer. And I'm going to use this specifically for just the eyes because I'm having a bit of trouble with the eyes and getting them to the exact exposure that I want them to be. And right now I have it at a too bright level. So now I will just adjust the opacity. So I'm gonna just keep it at 0 and then start to raise it up a bit until I start to think that it looks okay. And I think at 40, maybe 50%, it looks good. And let me just see how it looks like before and after. And now I think I finally got it to a level where I want it to be. Then I will just add a little bit of burn on the legs, just specifically, like I said before, just on the side of the leg, maybe a little bit on the entire leg because I feel it's a little too bright. Yeah, it looks a little too uneven. Maybe I'll just fix that with frequency separation. So I'll just add the frequency separation layers, and I do have a video on those layers, so I'm just going to skip to when the layers are created and then continue with the last little bit of frequency separation. And now with the frequency separation layers, sometimes what I'll do is I'll get the lasso tool, select the area that I want to make softer, and then add Gaussian blur to it. But sometimes in the out of focus areas, like her leg right now is out of focus, it looks too weird, so I will just go ahead and get the mixer brush instead and soften the skin of the leg that way. So I do have the shortcut for that, which is going to be N, and this, okay, it should not be colored, it should be clean brush, and I think it's going to stay like that. So yeah, so now it's good, and now I could just reverse what I just did and start to kind of just smoothen the leg right here with the mixer brush. Here is the before and here's the after. I feel like it's too smooth, so I will reduce the opacity to 70, and I think 70 is good. Now, if anything, I'll probably zoom out. I might add a little bit of noise in that leg there, and I think I'll take one last look at this image and see if there's anything I want to fix. I feel like her skin, it looks a little too yellow, so I might just give one last selective color layer, and I'll see if I can fix the skin tone to my liking. Here's the before, here's the after, and hopefully my eyes are fine, but I'm looking at this image and it looks good. And you know how that feeling is when you start to look at the image too long and you start to see the colors differently. I feel like that's going on, but I think it looks good to me now. Here's the before and here's the after. This is what I did to the yellows, and then this is what I did to the reds to get that effect. Now, if anything, I'll just give a little bit more contrast using the levels adjustment layer. I'm gonna bring this up to maybe just 4 and then reduce the opacity to like 80%. And then I think now I'm finally done with the image. And if anything else, I probably would just add a little bit of noise to that leg so that it doesn't look too soft. But aside from that, I'm pretty much done with this image. And if anything, the only thing I might do in addition to this is use generative fill to get a little bit of those flyaway hairs on the top. That's pretty much it for this image. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long, and I hope you learned something from it, because that's why I make these editing videos, so you guys can see exactly how I edit my images. But for now, I'll just say one last thanks to Adorama for sponsoring this video, because when they sponsor my stuff, it allows me to keep making free content for you guys. So definitely check them out. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the very next video.